Imperialism diary pages found in Johannesburg, South Africa, next at 11.
3, 2, 1, live.
Good evening, America. This is NHS News. I'm Meredith.
And I'm Barbara. Let's throw it back a bit. Until about 2,000 years ago, communities in South Africa have survived by planting and hunting animals. However, with the introduction of agriculture, people began to make use of domestic plants and animals. This led to a slow but steady rise in the population.
In the 17th and 18th centuries, Africans practiced religion in many different ways. Most practiced a religion such as Christianity, Islam, or traditional African religion. Some states were organized according to familial structure, and customs upheld by tribal elders regulated society.
In Africa, marriages were not a personal relationship between two people, but also a complex relationship between the clans. Marriage was a process that took a very long time. Although single men were often unmarried, women were rarely unmarried. Polygamy was prevalent, and the relationship between the wives was an important part of family life.
The economy was based on the importance of cattle. Power and wealth were mainly in the name of cattle, and chiefs tried their hardest to increase the size of their herds and take control of larger groups of people. Ivory was a major trade item. It was found near the interior of South Africa and traded at the coast.
In the 1870s, Europeans came to South Africa to try to spread their Christian faith and to capitalize their raw materials. With them, they brought advanced weaponry and their democratic ideas.
The word imperialism comes from the term empire. Imperialism is the domination of one country by another in order to expand territory, power, and influence. The dominating country has the idea of cultural superiority and feels that they are allowed to judge the way of life, traditions, and beliefs of the colonized because they are viewed as uncivilized and inferior. Competition among European countries to expand political control and gain wealth inspired colonial rule in South Africa. The British were not interested in South Africa at first, but when gold and diamonds were discovered in the 1860s and 1880s, they started to plan their takeover. In the beginning, colonial authorities secured the loyalty of African chiefs and kings and earned their trust. However, in the late 1800s, colonial governments emerged and began to play an active role in the affairs of African societies. Towards the end of the 19th century and during the early 20th century, South Africa was completely under British control. Colonization of South Africa by European countries was used to protect their trade ambitions and eventually led to the exploitation of Africa. European countries used their African colonies to supply their own industries with the rich raw materials Africa had to offer. Britain taxed other European countries for trading in their colonies to capitalize on the market. Colonial rule also ensured that European manufactured goods would have a ready market in Africa.
Now, Celia McCormick from NHS News interviews Okonkwo, a South African native, to find out more about the direct impacts of imperialism on her grandparents.
Hi, Celia here. I'm here with Okonkwo, who's heard many stories about imperialism from her grandparents. Okonkwo, how did your family react to the British controlling your tribes?
Well, my grandparents have told me many stories, and the British kept accusing my grandparents of worshiping fake gods and said that they were sent by God to save us. This is so unbelievable. The foreigners, how would you feel if foreigners just came into your land and told you that the way you have been living has gotten you nowhere but hell? How would you react?
That really is tragic.
Yeah.
So it is commonly known that there are some demeaning pictures out there that are used to evangelize you guys and convert you guys. How do you feel about those? Did your grandparents ever mention any?
They've shown my grandparents pictures of white angels in heaven and black people in hell. I am a proud Odinani. Tuku is God, and I will not listen to those missionaries that spread the gospel that have reached my family and friends because of their ancestors, and the British has worked in them in weird ways that I don't understand, and now religion has gone in between us when we're making decisions for the community. It's a shame, really.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have. Back to you, Meredith, at the studio.
Thank you, Celia. Now let's look at some more effects of imperialism.
The First South African War, also known as the First Anglo-Boer War, began as a conflict between the British settlers and the Boers of the Transvaal colony grew. It was one of the only wars that Britain had lost in about 2 centuries. The conflict between the settlers and the natives grew because of several reasons. One reason was because the British wanted to expand their empire by uniting all the British colonies, Boer republics, and independent African groups under their control. Another reason was that there were problems growing within the Transvaal government, creating a division between the people. Next, the British annexed the Transvaal even though majority of the Boers were against it. Lastly, and one of the most obvious reasons, was because the Boers were very against British rule in the Transvaal, since the British often placed their plans and ideas over the Boers. After the war, the Transvaal colony gained their independence from Britain and laid down a peace agreement. We have Ferdinand Bezuidenhout with diary pages from the 19th century found in his late grandfather's estate. Celia McCormick is reporting live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Celia?
Thanks, Barbara. Now I'm here with Ferdinand Bezuidenhout in his hometown of Johannesburg, South Africa. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I hate to correct you, but we pronounce it Bezuidenhout. I was born in Joburg and spent most of our summers in Cape Town. I have two brothers and a sister. I went to an all-boys high school, King Edward VII High School, and that's about it.
And how did you find these diary pages?
When my opa passed away, we went to his house and went through some of his belongings, and we found these documents that pertain to him opening the church in Joburg.
And now, just for the viewers out there that don't understand Afrikaans, Opa means?
Grandfather.
Since it is of national historical importance, these primary source documents are currently undergoing research in our NHS News Laboratory for language analysis. We'll have more on that in a few. Now back to you at the studio.
Thank you, Celia. Johannesburg looks like a wonderful place that I'd love to visit sometime. Now, just to tell you a little bit more about South Africa, it's located on the southern tip of Africa and it has about 2,500 kilometers of coastline.
It is about 1/8 the size of the United States and about 2 times the size of France. From the north to the south border, it is about 1,600 kilometers and about the same from the east to the west.
South Africa has 3 capitals: Cape Town, Bloemfontein, and Pretoria. Although it is not a capital, Johannesburg is considered the most important city in South Africa because it is the economic heart of the country.
South Africa also has 9 provinces, the smallest being Gauteng and the largest being the Northern Cape, which takes up almost a third of the South Africa's land area. Now to Patricia, our meteorologist here at NHS News.
Hi, I'm Patricia here with your 5-day forecast. On Monday, there's a 50% chance it will rain with a high of 87 and a low of 67. It's gonna be a wet one. On Tuesday, there is a 50% chance it will rain with a high of 88 and a low of 87. On Wednesday, you better pull that tank top because there's a high of 92 and a low of 60. On Thursday, there's a high of 90 and a low of 58. On Friday, there's a 20% chance it will rain with a high of 86 degrees and a low of 67. That's all I have for you today.
After the whole world seeing the negative impacts of imperialism, it began to die down. So, decolonization started. Decolonization is the process where colonies began to gain independence from their mother countries, such as Britain or the Netherlands.
Now, let's go to Marge, our NHS News historian, with more on the topic.
Hi, I'm Marge here with Stanford professor Evelyn.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. Thank you so much for having me here.
Although decolonization included independence, there was a lot of negative impact. Today we are going to concentrate on the British rule of South Africa. The British divided South Africa into 4 colonies: the Cape Colony, Natal Colony, Transvaal Colony, and the Orange River Colony.
South Africa gained its independence over a long period of time, not just a couple days. Some of the important years in South African timeline include 1910, 1912, 1923, 1961, 1990, and 1994.
Wait, Kara's like not even in it.
In 1910, the South Africa Act was passed and it unified the colonies. This act was passed and established at the National Convention with white delegates. These white settlers were favored, even though they were the minorities.
The South Africa Act made the 4 colonies into one union instead of a federal system. This was because the British wanted the South Africans under one controlled, peaceful government. This allowed for them to have a little bit more freedom, but still under British control.
Because the South Africans were not invited to the National Convention, they created their own native convention. Then, in 1923, this became the African National Congress.
Finally, in 1961, the Union of South Africa gained its independence and broke away from Britain. This new republic was governed by apartheid regime. This was a system where the South Africans and the white settlers were segregated in legislation.
Then, in 1990, this ended, and in 1994, the first democratic election was held in which Nelson Mandela became the first president.
Well, that's all we have for today. Thank you. Back to you at the studio.
Hello? Enter! Yes. Bring me 2 vanilla lattes. ASAP!
My name's Jenny.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Get the lattes.
Okay, thank you. We have now received word that the diary pages found in Ferdinand Bezuidenhout's grandfather's estate have been successfully run through the NHS News Language Lab. Now, Celia McCormick has the answers we've been waiting for.
22
October 22nd, 1887. Our ship docked on the shore of Cape Town, South Africa this morning, and wow, you would not believe it. The land looked so untouched, pristine. I knew it wasn't, though. That's why we were here, to help the savage. Our team, which consisted of just a few other missionaries and myself, ventured further into the city, following the sight of smoke, and reached what appeared to be a small village. Upon our arrival, there were shouts and the men disappeared into their huts, only returning after having found their machetes and guns, while the women and children peered curiously from the entrance. The translator, who was an Igbo man himself, told one of the men that we wished no harm, just peaceful residency in their village. I could tell the man was the chief by the way he stood tall and proud while the rest of the men searched his face for any hints of disapproval. I was so distracted as I took in all my surroundings that I didn't even notice that my fellow missionaries had begun walking toward an empty plot of land just outside the main village. The translator, Noye, told us that the leader is letting us stay by the marketplace. What a relief.
26
October 26, 1887.
1887.
I woke up to the sound of the bustling of people in the marketplace. Grabbing my Bible, I silently prayed, God, let today be the day that you bring your sheep home. It broke my heart to see these heathens so oblivious to the sin they were living in. Worshipping idols made of wood and stone, practicing animism and straying from God's purpose. I know that my God is the only one. I just wish their eyes would be open for a mere second so they could come to the truth.
Now, NHS News' Celia McCormick will tell us about some current events that are going on right now.
There is heated debate occurring in Cape Town over whether to remove the famous British imperialist Cecil John Rhodes' statue in South Africa. Although Rhodes accomplished many prosperous companies that help South Africa thrive today, his legacy is one of the most devastating wounds inflicted in the African continent. Throughout his constant pursuit of power and wealth, people's lives, freedom, and dignity were not spared. Some South Africans believe the removal of the statue must be done, while others believe the removal of Rhodes' statue will cause many problems, such as the cost to take it down. Those who do not support the removal of the statue believe it is needed to remind them of the daily struggle that is now over, and the statue should stand to remind them of the long road ahead. Thanks for watching! Take 5!
Long one.
I know.
Oh, Mr. President. Me? Really? I know. They keep me on a low payroll. Oh, yeah, some interns get paid.
There's a lot of negative impact.
We're not taking calls on this weather. Sorry, bye.